This ice is ready. Cause this ice is jumping out the bucket. And it's raining out here. Oh man. I think that I think this cold water with like melted ice is actually colder than actual regular ice. Yep. Ready to get out, but I'm comfortable. How you like that? How about that? Well, how about that? I like it. I like it a lot. Kid will be doing his first workout. You see it. Let me show you what I'm going to be getting going on very shortly. This family, it's my gym. It's pretty minimalistic at the moment, but I got a few more toys to add on so that I can sculpt y'all out some viewing satisfaction. You understand that? You underdig? I'm off some Neville Goddard today. Neville Goddard, brother! And I gotta plug this joint in before it shut off. It's whatever. I'm with whatever, cuz. I'm with whatever, cuz. I'm with whatever, cuz.
Why spiritually awake people are quietly disappearing from society. Carl Jung philosophy. The silence you can't ignore. Have you noticed, my friend, in this loud, restless, hyperactive world, something mysterious is happening?
The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding.
Right now, as you're watching this, you're operating across at least 7 dimensions simultaneously. You just don't realize it. That moment when you randomly think of someone and they call, 5th dimensional frequency alignment. The gut feeling that saves you from disaster, 6th dimensional information download. That creative breakthrough that seems to come from nowhere. You've briefly accessed what Thoth called the halls of Amenti, higher dimensional libraries of infinite possibility. For over 4,000 years, this knowledge has been carefully guarded. The ancient Egyptian mystery schools taught initiates to consciously navigate these dimensional layers, But this wisdom was systematically suppressed and fragmented. Today, it circulates only in restricted circles. Quantum physicists call it non-local consciousness, while Silicon Valley elites use it for reality hacking. Meanwhile, most people remain trapped in third-dimensional thinking, believing success comes from grinding harder, accumulating more, competing endlessly. They're using a smartphone like a paperweight. The dimensional shift happening right now means this window won't stay open forever. Those who learn to consciously operate multidimensionally will thrive. Those who don't will find reality increasingly chaotic and unpredictable. Look, I need to tell you something that's going to sound absolutely wild at first, but stay with me, because this changes everything about how you see your daily life. Most people are walking around believing they live in what I call a solid reality, where the laws of physics are unchangeable, where cause and effect work in straight lines, and where, if you want something, you have to physically chase after it through effort and struggle. This isn't just a casual belief system. It's been carefully constructed and reinforced through every institution you've ever encountered. Think about it. From kindergarten onward, you were taught that reality works like a machine. Push this button, get that result. Work hard, achieve success. Follow the rules, get rewarded. Everything operates in neat, predictable sequences. But here's what Thoth understood that completely shatters this comfortable illusion. Physical reality is just the densest layer of a much more fluid, responsive system. When Thoth inscribed those emerald tablets, he wasn't just recording mystical poetry. He was documenting the actual mechanics of how consciousness shapes experience. He saw through what we might call the third-dimensional trap, this idea that you're separate from everything around you, that you have to fight against circumstances to create change. And that time moves in one rigid direction from past to future. But here's where it gets really interesting. Right now, as you're listening to this, a significant portion of humanity is already operating beyond these third-dimensional limitations without even realizing it. They're experiencing what researchers call fifth-dimensional bleed-through, moments where the old rules simply don't apply anymore. Let me give you the radio frequency analogy that makes this crystal clear. Imagine you're in a room with dozens of radio stations broadcasting simultaneously. They're all occupying the same space, but you only hear one station based on where you set your dial. Third-dimensional consciousness, like being stuck on one station, convinced that's the only broadcast that exists. But fifth-dimensional awareness, that's when you realize you can tune into completely different frequencies that were there all along. The difference between these dimensions isn't about location, it's about the quality of consciousness you're operating from. Third-dimensional thinking is characterized by separation, effort, and linear time. You see yourself as isolated from your environment. You believe change requires physical force, and you experience events as happening to you in sequence. Fifth-dimensional consciousness operates on entirely different principles: interconnection, flow, and simultaneity. Instead of separation, you start recognizing that you're part of an intelligent field that responds to your internal states. Instead of effort, you discover that sustained feeling states naturally attract corresponding experiences. Instead of linear time, you begin experiencing synchronicities and meaningful coincidences that seem to bend causality. Neville Goddard spent decades mapping this territory, showing how imagination isn't just daydreaming, it's the actual creative force behind physical manifestation. He discovered that feeling is the secret, not thinking about what you want, not working harder toward your goals, but sustaining the internal feeling state of already having what you desire. This sounds like mystical nonsense until you realize it's describing how consciousness operates in higher dimensions. The problem is that everything in our culture is designed to keep you locked into the chase after it mentality. You want better health? Chase after it through diet and exercise. You want more money? Chase after it through harder work and better strategies. You want love? Chase after it through dating apps and self-improvement. But this entire approach assumes you're separate from what you want, that it exists out there somewhere, waiting for you to capture it through physical effort. What Thoth understood, and what's becoming increasingly obvious to people who are paying attention, is that achievements don't come from physical effort. They emerge from sustained internal states. When you can maintain the feeling of already being healthy, wealthy, or loved, the physical world rearranges itself to match that internal reality. Now, I have to mention something here. Some of the most specific and confidential aspects of how Thoth decoded these dimensional mechanics simply can't be shared openly on a platform like YouTube. The detailed techniques for consciously shifting between dimensional frequencies, the precise methods for stabilizing fifth dimensional awareness, and the advanced practices for navigating what he called the consciousness grid. These require a different kind of communication. But what I can share here is enough to help you recognize the signs that this shift is already happening in your own life. Pay attention to the multiplying coincidences. Notice how certain conversations that used to feel normal now feel almost intolerable, like you're speaking different languages with people who are still operating from the old paradigm. Watch for increased physical sensitivity, where you can actually feel the energy of places and people in ways that seem almost psychic. Observe how your relationship with time is changing, how some days feel eternal, while others seem to compress into moments. These aren't random phenomena. They're signs that your consciousness is already tuning into higher dimensional frequencies. Your internal radio dial is moving, whether you're consciously directing it or not. Here's what most people don't realize. This transition is happening collectively. It's not something you have to individually achieve through spiritual practices or self-development programs. It's a species-wide shift in consciousness that's already underway. The question isn't whether it's happening. It's whether you're going to participate consciously or let it happen to you unconsciously. There's more to this than we can say openly. Some truths are too sensitive, too sacred for this platform. That's why we created Insights Academy, a free newsletter where we go deeper, where we share what can't be said here. And for a limited time, if you sign up using the link in the description, you'll receive a free copy of the Kybalion, a foundational Hermetic text Thoth would have guarded himself. The old reality where you had to struggle against fixed circumstances to create change, that's becoming obsolete. The new reality where your internal states directly influence your external experiences, that's already here for those who know how to tune in. And the beautiful thing is, once you start recognizing these signs in your own life, you can't unsee them. The comfortable illusion of solid, unchangeable reality begins to dissolve, and you start living from a completely different set of principles. The same principles Thoth was trying to preserve for exactly this moment in human history. When you learned about dimensions in school, they gave you the sanitized version, a neat little package of length, width, height, and if you were lucky, time as the fourth dimension. Your teachers drew those clean coordinate systems on whiteboards, measuring boxes and calculating volumes, completely missing the profound reality that Thoth understood thousands of years ago. This mathematical convenience has created one of the most limiting misconceptions in human consciousness. We've been trained to think of dimensions as physical addresses, coordinates in space where objects exist. But that's like trying to understand music by only studying the physical properties of sound waves, completely ignoring the emotional and consciousness-altering effects of harmony, rhythm, and melody. Thoth, as the architect of sacred geometry and the mathematics underlying reality itself, knew something our educational system has forgotten or deliberately obscured. Dimensions aren't places. They're vibrational patterns of existence. They're states of consciousness that determine not just what you perceive, but the fundamental quality and organizing principles of the reality you experience. Think about this for a moment. When you're in a state of deep love, doesn't the entire world seem different? Colors appear more vivid, synchronicities multiply, and solutions to problems seem to emerge effortlessly. When you're consumed by fear or anger, that same physical world becomes threatening. Obstacles appear insurmountable, and you feel separated from everything around you. Same coordinates in space and time, completely different dimensional reality. The ancient Vedic texts describe this with remarkable precision, outlining multiple lokas, not physical locations, but interpenetrating realms of consciousness that coexist in the same apparent space. The Hermetic schools taught about subtle and dense planes of existence, while Christian mystics spoke of the many mansions in their Father's house. They weren't describing real estate, they were mapping consciousness itself. In the third dimensional state that most humans currently inhabit, you experience reality through the lens of separation. There's you, the observer, and everything else, the observed. This creates the fundamental illusion that you're an isolated consciousness trapped inside a physical body, subject to external forces beyond your control. Time moves in one direction like an arrow.
She took your nigga and you fell. 10 minutes. Record it so I can zoom in. Okay, zoom in for me. Zoom in that. There we go. Zoom in some more. Zoom in some more.
Man, your camera ain't worthy, man.
No, mine is. It is. Okay. Oh, shit. Oh.
She was still. She already fought. That was when she was already right here. They already did their thing and nobody even got to report it.
Y'all ain't gonna do shit. She took your nigga and you fell. Well, damn. She took your nigga and you fell. 10 minutes. Is she back on the ground?
Yeah.
Oh, no, she ain't. Oh. There we go. Let me see. I gotta get this. This the real footage right now. And I am.
I'm happy. Don't tell me that.
Oh, shit! Oh, shit! Oh, shit! She said keep recording! Okay! Oh, my God! Oh, I love her! I love her! Let her go! Wait, hold on. My blunt's recorded so I can zoom in. Okay, zoom in for me. Zoom in that. There we go. Zoom in some more. Zoom in.
Man, your camera ain't worthy, man.
No, mine is. It is. Oh, shit. Oh.
She was still. She already fought. That was when she was already right here. They already did their thing and nobody even got to report it.
Y'all ain't gonna do shit. She took your nigga and you fell. Well, damn. She took your nigga and you fell. 10 minutes. Is she back on the ground?
Yeah.
Oh, no, she ain't. Oh. There we go. Let me see. I gotta get this. This the real footage right now. And I am.
I'm happy. Don't tell me that.
Oh, shit! Oh, shit! Oh, shit! She said keep recording! Okay! Oh, my God! Oh, I love her! I love her! Let her go! Wait, hold on. My blunt's recorded so I can zoom in. Okay, zoom in for me. Zoom in that. There we go. Zoom in.
President Donald Trump's policies have hit the Native American community hard, and not many are talking about it.
The Trump administration started harassing tribal people, even detaining tribal people from this country.
from past through present to future, creating the experience of aging, decay, and scarcity. Everything requires effort. You push against resistance, struggle to make things happen, and feel exhausted by the constant battle against circumstances. Matter appears solid and immutable. Physical laws seem absolute and unchanging. Your identity gets shaped by external narratives, what others think of you, your job title, your possessions, your achievements or failures. You're constantly seeking validation from outside sources because the ego-based identity of third-dimensional consciousness depends entirely on external reference points. But in fifth-dimensional awareness, the game changes completely. The separation between observer and observed dissolves. You begin to perceive the invisible fields of connection that link all things, what quantum physicists are now measuring as entanglement, what indigenous shamans have always known as the web of life. Time becomes fluid, with past, present, and future coexisting as simultaneous possibilities rather than fixed sequences. Most remarkably, consciousness begins directly shaping events rather than simply reacting to them. This isn't wishful thinking, it's a measurable phenomenon. The HeartMath Institute has documented how coherent heart rhythms create electromagnetic fields that extend several feet beyond the human body, influencing not just other people, but electronic equipment. When groups achieve coherent states simultaneously, they can measurably affect random number generators and other quantum systems. In fifth-dimensional consciousness, creation arises from vibrational states rather than physical effort. You align with desired outcomes energetically first, and physical reality rearranges itself to match. This is why Neville Goddard taught that changing the world means changing yourself and nothing else, not because external circumstances don't matter, but because they're secondary expressions of consciousness rather than primary causes. We're witnessing this dimensional shift on a planetary scale. The Schumann resonance, Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat, has been fluctuating in unprecedented ways. For decades, it held steady at 83 hertz, but now we're seeing spikes reaching 36 hertz and higher. While scientists debate the causes, many researchers correlate these variations with collective consciousness expansions, moments when large numbers of humans simultaneously access higher dimensional awareness. This transition explains why everything feels so intense right now. Old problems keep resurfacing, not as punishment, but as expansion portals. In third-dimensional thinking, obstacles are walls that block your path. In fifth-dimensional awareness, they become doors that dissolve when you stop pushing against them and start flowing through them. The key is releasing attachment to drama and victim narratives. Every time you catch yourself thinking, "This is happening to me," you're choosing third-dimensional perception. When you shift to, "This is happening for me," or even, "This is happening as me," you're accessing fifth-dimensional consciousness where challenges become catalysts for expansion rather than evidence of limitation. Your nervous system is already adapting to these higher frequencies through neuroplasticity, literally rewiring itself to process more complex patterns of information. The question isn't whether you're capable of fifth-dimensional awareness. You're already experiencing it in moments of flow, creativity, deep connection, and sudden knowing. The question is whether you'll recognize these experiences for what they are and learn to stabilize them as your primary operating system. The dimensional shift isn't coming. It's here. You're not preparing for higher consciousness. You're remembering it. Here's something that completely shattered my understanding of how reality actually works, and it comes directly from one of Thoth's most profound teachings, hidden in plain sight within the Hermetic principle. As above, so below. Everything you've been taught about achieving what you want is backwards, completely backwards. You've been conditioned to believe in what I call the 3D paradigm. Identify your goal, create a detailed plan, apply massive effort, And eventually, if you're lucky and work hard enough, you'll reach your target. This linear approach treats desire like a destination you must travel to, step by exhausting step. But here's what Thoth understood about fifth-dimensional mechanics that changes everything. You don't pursue what you desire. What you desire is magnetically drawn to you when your internal frequency aligns with it. This isn't some fluffy metaphor. This represents specific energetic mechanics that are measurable in vibrational terms. Let me explain exactly how this works. In the third-dimensional paradigm, separation between you and your desire appears absolutely real. There's you over here, your goal over there, and physical distance that must be crossed through time and effort. You send out resumes and anxiously wait by the phone. You spend months visiting properties, making offers, dealing with rejections. You swipe through dating apps, going on awkward first dates, hoping someone will finally stick around. But in fifth-dimensional reality, this distance doesn't exist in any absolute sense. There are only fields of resonance, and when frequencies match precisely, potential collapses into manifestation almost instantaneously. Think about it this way. Your brain generates measurable electromagnetic fields. Your heart produces an electromagnetic field 60 times stronger than your brain's. When you achieve what neuroscientists call coherence, when your thoughts, emotions, and energy field integrate into a unified signal, you literally become a coherent magnetic field broadcasting at a specific frequency. Now here's where it gets fascinating. Everything you desire exists as potential energy vibrating at its own frequency signature. When your internal frequency matches that signature exactly, the universe doesn't have a choice. The magnetic pull becomes irresistible. I've watched this happen countless times, and the contrast is striking. Someone spends 2 years applying to jobs through traditional methods, networking events, online applications, following up with hiring managers. Nothing. Then they shift into fifth-dimensional operation. They stop the frantic searching and instead sustain the feeling of already being valued in meaningful work. Within 3 weeks, a former colleague calls out of nowhere with an opportunity that's exactly what they wanted. Or consider real estate. I know someone who looked at houses for 8 months, made offers, got outbid, dealt with inspection problems, financing issues. Exhausting. Then she tried something different. She stopped actively searching but maintained the vivid feeling of already living in her ideal space. The morning light through the kitchen window, the sound of her footsteps on hardwood floors, the sense of being completely at home. 2 weeks later, a property came on the market that wasn't even listed yet. The seller's agent contacted her directly because someone mentioned she was looking. This isn't coincidence. This is the direct consequence of operating as a coherent magnetic field instead of a scattered, effortful seeker. But here's what makes this so challenging for most people. You have to release compulsive control and trust invisible mechanisms. Your nervous system has been trained to equate effort with results. When you stop pushing and start resonating, every conditioned part of you screams that you're being lazy, unrealistic, irresponsible. The neurophysiology tells a different story. When you sustain coherent states, your brain produces alpha and theta waves that keep your perception open and dramatically reduce internal resistance. You start noticing opportunities that were always there but filtered out by a mind focused on struggle and scarcity. This is exactly what Neville Goddard meant by feeling the wish fulfilled. He wasn't talking about positive thinking or visualization exercises. He was describing a specific vibrational state you sustain until the outer world reflects that internal condition. The key is understanding that events still require physical action, but action becomes the natural consequence of aligned internal states rather than the primary engine. Instead of energy scattered into effort, obsessive planning, and resistance, all your power concentrates on maintaining vibrational coherence, and this requires tremendous precision. Vague intention produces weak signals lost in noise, but precise intention infused with authentic feeling generates coherent brainwave patterns, coupled with powerful heart electromagnetic fields. The signal becomes unmistakable. Here's what I mean by precision. Instead of, "I want a better job," the coherent signal might be, "I feel the satisfaction of contributing my unique skills to an environment where my ideas are valued and implemented." Instead of, "I want to find love," it becomes, "I feel the deep recognition and appreciation of being truly seen and cherished for exactly who I am." The difference isn't just semantic. These refined intentions create completely different vibrational signatures that attract entirely different possibilities. When you sustain this coherence, something remarkable happens to your relationship with space-time. Linear time stops feeling like a barrier. Events that would take months through conventional logic unfold in days because you're no longer operating within the constraints of step-by-step causation. This connects to something much larger that Thoth encoded in all his teachings. Physical reality responds to subtler consciousness instructions. Matter follows mind, but only when mind achieves sufficient coherence to broadcast clear, sustained signals. The magnetic reversal isn't just about getting what you want more efficiently. It's about recognizing that you're already operating in dimensions where thought, feeling, and manifestation are intimately connected. You've always been a magnetic field. The question is whether you're broadcasting coherently or just adding to the noise. Most people will read this and immediately start trying to apply the technique. But technique thinking keeps you trapped in 3D mechanics. The shift happens when you recognize you're already the magnet. You're just learning to align your field with what you actually want to draw into your experience. When your energetic system begins restructuring for fifth-dimensional living, there's nothing subtle about it. This isn't some gentle spiritual awakening that unfolds over decades. It's more like your entire cellular network receiving a massive software update, and every incompatible file gets flagged for deletion. Your body becomes the primary battlefield for this transformation. Old traumas that you thought were buried start surfacing with uncomfortable intensity. That relationship wound from 15 years ago suddenly feels fresh again. The grief you never fully processed comes knocking at 3 a.m. Your nervous system starts clearing decades of accumulated stress patterns, and it's not asking for your permission. But here's what Thoth understood that most spiritual teachings miss. These emotional eruptions aren't punishment or evidence that you're doing something wrong. They're your system's way of purging data that can't exist at higher frequencies. Think of it like this. Fifth-dimensional consciousness operates on a completely different energetic bandwidth, and certain emotional patterns simply can't translate. They have to be dissolved. The acceleration is unmistakable. Emotional cycles that used to take years to resolve now compress into weeks or days. You might find yourself moving through anger, grief, acceptance, and peace within a single afternoon. This isn't emotional instability. It's your emotional body learning to process energy at light speed instead of the sluggish pace you're used to. Your sensitivity to environments becomes almost overwhelming at first. Walking into certain spaces feels like hitting an energy wall. That crowded restaurant that never bothered you before now feels suffocating. Your friend's apartment, where you used to hang out for hours, suddenly feels dense and heavy after 20 minutes. You're not becoming antisocial. You're becoming energetically discerning. This heightened sensitivity extends to people in ways that can be deeply unsettling. You start reading intentions through energy fields rather than words. Someone can be telling you they're happy for your success, while their energy broadcasts resentment so clearly it might as well be written on their forehead. This isn't mind reading, it's frequency recognition. You're learning to perceive the vibrational truth beneath social performances. The challenging part is that this sensitivity isn't optional, and it requires constant energetic hygiene. Spending time in misaligned environments or with people operating from lower frequencies doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It actively drains your personal field. You find yourself needing to limit exposure to certain places, media, and conversations, not because you're being judgmental, but because your system maintain its new frequency while absorbing incompatible energies. This brings us to what might be the most difficult aspect of the dimensional shift, the inevitable relationship realignment. Fifth dimensional perception exposes social masks with uncomfortable precision. Dynamics that you used to navigate unconsciously become glaringly obvious. That friend who always turns conversations back to themselves, the family member who uses guilt to control your behavior, the colleague who drains your energy with constant complaining, relationships sustained by manipulation, emotional dependence, or savior-victim games become energetically exhausting. You don't necessarily have dramatic confrontations or burning bridges. Instead, you experience a natural drift. The frequency mismatch creates an organic set that feels almost automatic. The most liberating realization that emerges during this process is understanding that you cannot save anyone. This goes against every codependent pattern you've been taught, but it's absolutely crucial for maintaining fifth dimensional frequency. Each person chooses their experiences at a soul level, including a pace of growth and awakening. Your attempts to accelerate someone else's development or rescue them from their chosen lessons isn't just futile, it's energetically expensive and potentially delays their natural evolution. Neville Goddard captured this perfectly when he taught that the other is always you projected. Trying to change someone else without changing yourself is like attempting to fix your reflection by adjusting the mirror image instead of moving your actual body. The energy you spend trying to convince, cajole, or save others is energy diverted from your own transformation. Your emotional body undergoes its own metamorphosis during this shift. Old reactive patterns start clearing out like outdated software being uninstalled. Situations that used to trigger hours or days of emotional turbulence now produce brief, intense feelings that dissipate quickly. You might experience anger, sadness, or frustration with surprising intensity, but instead of getting stuck in these emotions, you find yourself moving through them like weather patterns passing through the sky. This creates what feels like a fundamental shift in your relationship to your own emotions. You begin operating more from an observer position, with space between stimulus and response where higher consciousness can illuminate choices you never noticed before. This prevents external conflicts from hijacking your attention and maintains the vibrational stability essential for fifth dimensional frequency. The internal coherence that develops from this emotional mastery produces external synchronicities that seem statistically impossible. Chance meetings that solve long-standing problems, opportunities appearing exactly when needed, blocked situations unlocking automatically without your direct intervention. These aren't coincidences. They're the natural result of your internal frequency aligning with fifth dimensional flow. In this dimension, there's no real boundary between your internal feeling state and your external living experience. Life responds like an amplified echo of your dominant frequency. When your inner world achieves coherence, your outer world reorganizes itself to match. This is why the internal work isn't separate from practical results. It is the mechanism that produces them. The signs aren't subtle because the transformation isn't subtle. You're literally rewiring your entire system to operate at a frequency that most of human civilization hasn't accessed yet. Pay attention to these shifts happening in your own experience. They're confirmation that you're already living the reality that others are still seeking. When you start operating from fifth dimensional consciousness, some everyday experience that goes far beyond noticing more synchronicities or feeling slightly more intuitive. Your entire gets rewired from the ground up, and suddenly you're living in what feels like a completely different reality, even though nothing around you has technically changed. The most dramatic shift happens in what I call the conscious observer space. In third dimensional living, you're essentially on autopilot most of the time. Something happens, your boss sends a terse email, traffic backs up, someone cuts in line, and boom, your internal state immediately matches the energy of whatever just occurred. There's no gap between stimulus and response. You're reactive, which means your emotional and energetic state is constantly being hijacked by external circumstances. But dimensional consciousness creates this incredible buffer zone between what happens and how you respond. It's like suddenly having a strategic command center in your mind where you can pause, assess, and choose your response from a place of stability rather than reactivity. This isn't positive thinking or emotional suppression. It's accessing a fundamentally different operating system where drama literally cannot take hold because you're no longer feeding it with unconscious reactions. I watched this transformation happen with a client who used to spend hours crafting angry emails to difficult colleagues, then deleting them, then rewriting them, caught in these exhausting cycles of emotional reactivity. Once she stabilized in fifth dimensional awareness, she'd receive the same triggering messages, but experienced them completely differently. The content hadn't changed, but her relationship to it had. She could read the email, recognize the other person's stress or fear driving their tone, and respond from clarity rather than defensiveness. Her colleagues started commenting on how much more effective and pleasant she'd become to work with. This leads directly into what I call vibrational monitoring, becoming exquisitely sensitive to your own energetic state, and intervening the moment you feel it starting to drift from alignment. Most people wait until they're already angry, anxious, or depleted before they notice something's off. By then, you're playing catch-up, trying to recover from an already compromised state. Fifth dimensional living flips this entirely. You develop this internal radar system that detects subtle energetic shifts before they gain momentum. Maybe you notice a slight tightness in your chest during a conversation, or a barely perceptible drain when scrolling through certain social media feeds, or a subtle agitation after spending time in particular environments. Instead of pushing through or ignoring these signals, you start treating them as valuable intelligence about what supports your alignment and what doesn't. This awareness forces some radical choices that can completely restructure your life. You realize that not every person, situation, or environment deserves access to your energetic field. The filtering process becomes vibrational rather than just logical or moral. You might find yourself naturally pulling back from social circles that operate on complaint, gossip, or drama, not because you judge them, but because maintaining your alignment becomes more important than maintaining familiar patterns. I've seen people completely transform their social lives this way. One woman realized that her weekly dinner group, which she'd attended for years, consistently left her feeling drained and scattered. These weren't bad people. They were longtime friends, but the group dynamic had settled into patterns of negativity and victim consciousness that were incompatible with her evolving state. She gradually stepped back and instead started connecting with people who were also prioritizing their growth and consciousness. Her social circle became smaller, but infinitely more nourishing. The same principle applies to professional environments, living situations, even the media you consume. You become incredibly selective, not from a place of judgment or superiority, but from recognition that your energetic state is your most valuable resource. This isn't isolation. It's creating space for connection